turning your entire gaming brand into the thing that pulls as bad as Congress is maybe one of the biggest miscalculations in history.
But money. Look at that sweet, sweet money they're making.
And welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. I am your host, Tom. And today's lead sponsors are JLC PCB, where they have $123 in new user coupons on their website through the links below. Also, Minis Forum and their dual NVMe dual 25G card that you can get $30 off with Broken Silicon. And then CDkeyoffer.com, where you can get Windows 11 Pro for $24. And today, I'm joined by someone who's been on many times. It's funny. I've been kind of, especially because of all of the RAM prices going up, I've been kind of more focusing on console stuff the past couple months, especially because, new console launches, new news about that, those happen only every 7 years. So it's kind of more interesting to me as well. But then I was like, there's an Arrow Lake refresh coming. Let's pivot back to CPU. Let's have Leo on. I did not know that the day before he would come on, not only would he have his reviews ready to go, but the 290K would be canceled. The 9950 X3D2 would be announced, and also a bunch of price increases on the said consoles would also happen the day we record. So we have plenty to talk about, but please, Leo, introduce yourself. What do you do? What sort of, and what are you most interested in talking about, I have to say, this year? Because it's a weird year.
It is peculiar. As you say, it's been a busy few days. I'm Leo Waldock. I work for a website and YouTube channel in the UK called KitGuru. Very British. I've been doing that for a very long time, at least 10 years. YouTube channel's going quite nicely. Used to be a writer, but now it's videos galore. As to what has interested me, weirdly, that question almost stumped me when Tom sent it over, even though it's a standard question, because the world's so bizarre at the moment. As you mentioned, after I did my Intel Core Ultra 200S Plus reviews, at the same time, I did an interview with Robert Hallock of Intel and a couple of his sidekicks. That's on KitGuru's YouTube channel. And Robert was discussing in detail memory. Now, we know memory prices are absolutely horrendous. So my wish for the year is that OpenAI evaporates. ChatGPT is sold off to somebody for parts. And then memory can drop back to, say, only double what it used to be. And then once we get back into the world of sanity, dual rank and quad rank memory is the thing. Also, with a nod to what we've seen from the Apple Nova, the dirt cheap laptop that's come out recently.
The Neo,
with almost no memory. And it turns out you can actually put software into a mere 8 gig of memory if you actually work at it. And wouldn't it be nice if Windows software is a bit like that? Instead of 32 gig, you need 64 gig. Wouldn't it be great if 16 gig was all the memory you ever need? So I'd like it if software writers were to sort their act out. But specifically with memory, apart from prices, better, more rapid, more responsive memory. So it's a nuance. It's not just higher clocks. It's dual rank and quad rank memory.
Yeah. Actually, let me start. Well, actually, we do a disclaimer first. So just so everyone knows, the reason it's dark behind me and you'll probably hear beeping and things turn on every now and then is I am having work done on my house right now. And so I don't think the mic will probably pick up almost any of it. But just if you see flashing, if you want to know why it looks more like I'm in a cave, that's why I'm hooked up to like an EcoFlow battery with my desktop set up to work right now. So anyways, but let me actually, because you brought it up, start with this question. Dylan M writes in and says, "Hi, Tom and Leo. As Qualcomm is trying to get into the PC market, I started to think maybe it would be better if they put a phone CPU in a laptop like a MacBook Neo to fit the lower power niche in the Windows space. What do you think, though? Also, would you say that Soundwave is trying to be a competitor to the MacBook Neo or whatever its refresh is going to be?" So I'll answer that question. I think the answer to that is yes. That is everything I've seen from the specs of Soundwave is it's kind of like a Chromebook replacement APU with ARM, and that's what Neo is as well. But if do you have anything else to say about MacBook Neo, or the fact that I know that OEMs are terrified by this thing?
Oh, as they should be. The thing is, to my mind, it's if the product, if the in this case a laptop, if it does the job, and if the job is checking the tracking on your delivery, shopping at Amazon, watching a video, which is, after all, that's the vast majority of what people actually do with their devices. If a relatively cheap device can do those things, why do you want something else? And the problem very often with PCs is they're overly complicated and make your life difficult, and they don't do a massively good job. If you've ever built a small form factor PC, a bare bones PC, various companies make them these days, Ace Magic and such like. By the time you've bought a thing for £400 or £500 or dollars, and then you put some memory and some storage in it, you put Windows on it, even if you get a $25 Windows key and all the rest of it, you're still spending $1,000. And then what are you going to do? You've got to hook it up to a TV or a monitor or whatever. If you can get a device that's as dumb as a brick and does what you need, and you can do video calls and so on, and then you haven't got to, work on a tiny little screen, why not? That's the thing. And if a fraction of the market goes that way, because after all, Apple is a hell of a brand, then that's going to take a chunk of the market with it, and that affects everybody else. That's really the thing of it. The counter to that, I've reviewed one Panther Lake laptop so far, which was a horribly expensive, the dual screen ZenBook Duo. There was a bit of kerfuffle to do with samples, and that was, I think, $2,500. Now, I'd expected the base kind of decent model ones to be $2,000, but they sent a posh version with dual screen, right. So it's $2,500. But a year ago, for Meteor Lake, the ZenBook with Meteor Lake was $1,500. So in my mind, I've gone from $1,500 to $2,000 because, the modern times, and then suddenly it's $2,500 for a clever posher version. Balanced against that, $750, $800. I mean, that's, if it does the job, how can you not get one?
Yeah, and just Josh, that YouTuber was recently on Broken Silicon as well. He sounded the alarm before Neo even came out. He's like, this thing is going to eat OEMs alive. And I don't know, maybe this will be a big wake up call to them, but then again, Apple also has scale. So I think there's a real question in how much they can even respond. And it's really the worst time for this to happen for the OEMs, because people are, the polls, the surveys, they're all out there. People are sick of Windows. And this is the exact time where like a $500 or $600 MacBook could probably eat even more of the competition. Like, for example, I talked to retailers about, this was a sidebar when I was asking, does anyone care about AI branding on laptops? And the answer is resounding no, which is a little surprising to me, because I don't know. I don't want to say I have a low opinion of the average man, but I tend to think, maybe they'll fall for it. But no one has fallen for the AI stuff. Even, in fact, they care about it less than I do, like the average person, which I guess isn't surprising. I'm a tech person, but like they say, no, seriously, believe it or not, and this is someone who works at a Best Buy, like, believe it or not, compared to other times Windows has sucked, like a lot of people are coming in, they're trying to force you to upgrade from Windows 10 to 11. Like my mom has a Zen 1 laptop that can't run Windows 11 for some reason, even though it certainly could. And they're like, actually, about 1 out of 4 people are asking us about installing Linux on their laptop. And they've never seen this before, not with Vista, not with anything. And it's like, so I don't know and there was another retailer that told me a similar thing as well. So I don't know what the real number is. Like a 1 out of 4 say it, only, 1 out of 8 actually do it. But that's a lot. If it's even 10%.
Even if that's 1 out of 4 people that have actually gone in the store to actually ask the question, then it's obviously a lot less than 1 in 4 of the total. But nonetheless, that has to be significant. Plus, that 1 in 4 people are the kind of people that will have told at least one other person about the travails in their life, and they'll have phoned you or me as the member of family to complain, which is why they've ended up in Best Buy to buy some such. bizarrely, I think last time I spoke to you, and possibly the time before, I asked your audience how many of them were using Windows 10 for gaming, because I was thinking, obviously, the answer is almost none, to which you said you use Windows 10 for gaming, and many of your audience...
Not anymore. I'm on 11 now. Cool. They are ruining 10. It doesn't work anymore. Go on.
Well, and quite deliberately so.
Yeah.
Now, I went to 11, I can't remember... it was when Alder Lake launched with the P-Core E-Core thing, and we were told at the time 11 will give you the better experience, which wasn't actually true. But at that point, so when Alder Lake launched is when I switched to 11, and I've been 11 all the way, and I've had no trouble whatsoever. However, I run decent quality PCs, and therefore I don't suffer from that thing of it won't run because of this or that. But I'm sick and tired of the endless drivers this and updates that. And I'm on AMD AM5, so every so often a BIOS with newer Gisa code, reset your fan curves. This is what I do for a living, and I'm not completely impressed. So I'm not surprised the average real person is sick and tired. And let's face it, a cheap Apple laptop, if they already have an iPhone... so why did I say it like that? An iPhone. If they have an iPhone, it fits into the ecosystem. Having said that, I use a Google Pixel myself. So Windows PC, Google Pixel. And I appreciate I am in that, 2%.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the greater threat too is, well, if it ever comes out, the Steam Machine, or which we'll get to it, or the PS5, like. There's a lot of people that would go, why am I bothering anymore? I can just get a PlayStation, maybe a Steam Machine someday. Some people, maybe they'll just get a Switch 2. That's my girlfriend, after all. She uses a Switch 2 primarily. And then they'll have a MacBook Neo. And ultimately, the Neo does work. And and those two together are going to be vastly cheaper than a desktop. So I don't know. It just really seems like there's a perfect storm going on here. I mean, I tell you, retailers, a lot of them think of the smaller mom and pop pre-built PC companies are probably going to go out of business this year. I don't mean to just get so dark at the beginning of this, but that is, and then seeing what's going on now with further price increases due to war in the Middle East, I think it's done. I think this is going to be pretty brutal. I feel like this is just kind of a lost year for hardware, and it's unfortunately. And I did not think that earlier this year. I didn't. It's worse, but now it's turning into that.
It's worse than that. One of the very, I said before we started talking, just breaking the fourth wall to the audience, I said before we started to you that the answer to most of the questions that the audience have raised, which are perfectly solid questions, the answer in most instances is money, because money, and at least half of those is because Jensen money. When you say it's a bleak year ahead, I didn't go to CES this year for the first time in a while. Obviously, I didn't go during COVID, but I've been for the last, 7 or 8 times. And I didn't go this year because Intel was launching Panther Lake, but it's a launch. We knew all about it. We're just waiting for a laptop to actually review. And beyond that, I was expecting nothing apart from AI. Plus, I hate getting sick going to Vegas, and you always get sick and feel awful for a week. And everybody came back reporting the same thing. So there was that. And then it's like, okay, what's coming at Computex? Computex is end of May, beginning of June. This year it runs officially from the 2nd to the 4th of June, Tuesday to Friday, 2nd to 5th of June. And that's obviously in Taiwan, and it's where all the manufacturers are. Therefore, it's big, and they will make a point of having new stuff. And it really is a big dick competition among them, very much so. They're all in the same show center, and they're competing with each other. And it's great. It's really genuinely good. And last year, end of last year, when I was going, okay, I'm not going to do CS, what be at Computex? And I was really struggling. I'll be at Computex and covering Computex. But as you alluded, AMD has just announced the Ryzen 9 99, God, what is it? Ryzen 9 9950X 3D2. They've announced that. They announced that a couple of yesterday. So that's in Q1. I'm sure that's significant, which means what is AMD announcing in Q2? I cannot think of a thing. Nothing.
No, I said a similar thing to my girlfriend when we were like trying to plan vacations and stuff. I'm like, we really should travel this summer because I don't think That much. I mean, I do a lot of leaks. I'm sure I'll be talking about stuff that comes out next year. So it's a little different for me because I'm usually like actually a year ahead in what I want to talk about. So that's good. But I don't think there's going to be any urgent things I need to cover.
Intel on the roadmap has got Nova Lake, which depending on that they originally said would be launched at the very end of this year. So 2026.
We'll
obviously.
See. I mean, I know they want to.
Well, Lip Bhutan has now said it will be at CES 2027, which obviously is only 1 week away. So you get if they can put one on a shelf somewhere on the last day of this year, then it's launched in 2026.
But they didn't do that with Panther Lake. They did obviously with Meteor Lake, and I clowned on it a ton. The December 31st release date was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I would prefer they just be honest and just launch it a month later.
Yeah, but shareholders and money.
Oh, I know.
So therefore, if they can come up with some wording that suggests that something happened with Nova Lake in this calendar year, and then at CES they can do a big show about it, that's great. But that means, because that's 6 months away, the chances they're showing Nova Lake at Computex is slim to zero. They might talk about it, but big deal. It's going to be just a presentation. I doubt they will. So I'm not expecting Intel to do anything that we care about at Computex. Nvidia has just done GTC. Obviously, they rule the world. And I'm not expecting anything from Nvidia for the rest of this year that we care about. They're too busy making money. AMD's big deal at the minute is their deal. The last deal was with Meta, wasn't it? It was with Anthropic before that. So it's Instinct graphics accelerators for the data center. MI 350, 375, 400, whatever. And they're talking a gigawatt at a time, and that's a lot of graphics cards. I really, truly think they announced that processor yesterday, apart from the reasons that you stated in your response, partly to go, don't expect a damn thing at Computex. It's AI, nothing but AI. And it's going to be very strange. There will be lots of things at Computex, but the companies that drive it generally are Nvidia, AMD, and Intel. And I'm expecting nothing from them at all, which is really weird because they usually take turns. So Qualcomm could actually, if they get their act together, do something. I doubt they will, but they could.
Yeah, I would say Qualcomm's probably the most positioned after AMD to kind of be okay, because AMD has established platforms. A lot of the things they're launching, like the 9950 X3D2, this is an upgrade to a motherboard you already own, probably therefore already own the RAM. Qualcomm can launch budget products that don't need a ton of RAM. It's really kind of the worst time for Intel to try to launch a refresh, to be honest, is a CPU that uses the latest memory and requires a new platform during shortages.
I think the reason Intel, I think, did the refresh, because I truly, the rumors were flying around for months. I can't remember how many months, but months. And what we expected was that the Core Ultra 5 would get a bit of a boost and become a better Core Ultra 5. The Core Ultra 7 would get a better boost and become a better Core Ultra 7. And the Core Ultra 9 would get a bit of a boost and be a better Core Ultra 9. And instead, they boosted the Ultra 5 a bit and made it into an Ultra 6. The Ultra 7 has become the Ultra 9. It's better than the previous Ultra 9, and it's a lot cheaper. And the Ultra 9 is dead, which means that Intel now, I would say they actually own the low end and mid range of the PC market if anybody buys their products. The thing is, I don't think many people will buy the products.
The Amazon CPU bestseller is absolutely brutal. I looked at it in preparation for the video I put out yesterday, kind of looking at the 290K cancellation. And as usual, top 10, all AMD. And then you keep going. And I'm trying to remember which one it was, but I think you had to go down, like, where is it? You actually can probably just pull up what I looked at yesterday. Yeah, like you don't get to the 265KF, which is one of those 8 plus 12 i5 Ultra 7s that everyone says is like the best deal on earth. It's 250 and it's 32nd place. And it's like, so, and I think that people need to think holistically about what that means. It's not just that it's in 32nd place. It's that it can't get above 32nd at 250 for 18 cores. I mean, that's just insane. So, but let's actually get into this now, like Arrow Lake refresh, what you think about it, because I don't say I ignored it, but I kind of glanced at it for the initial coverage I had because I was just focused on all these other things going on with consoles and stuff. And then for the video I did yesterday, I had to like really look at a bunch of reviews and in preparation for this podcast. And I have to say that I thought I would be actually more impressed. And if you get past the thumbnails of many YouTube videos, the conclusions at Gamers Nexus, Hardware Unboxed, for example, aren't really like slam dunk endorsements they're making their thumbnails look like, which you see that happen all the time. But I'll give more of my thoughts in a second. Like, what would you say about Arrow Lake Refresh? What do you think of it?
It's like the business about the guy giving directions, and you say, how do I get to the such and such? I wouldn't start from here, and you point across the road and say, I'd start from over there, and then you go, there you go. And the thing being is that Arrow Lake, when it launched in October or November of 2024, it wasn't ready for launch. It was a beta product. Why they launched why it launched in that state is a complete puzzle. Nobody understands it. Halleck, in my interview, because I wondered if it's to do with this mysterious memory they gave us, CU DIMMs, which I wasn't aware of at the time until they literally arrived in my lap. So it's regular DDR5. It has an extra chip in the middle, along with all the power regulation stuff called a CKD. Essentially, it's a redriver, and it means they can run higher memory speeds. So we were running memory at like 8,000 rather than 6,000, and it worked very well. But the system was terrible. And Halleck was saying it was down to Windows not being ready. Goes back to your point. Windows was fixed a while ago, but Intel's done a lot of work. So it's clearly not the case that Windows was the problem. That clearly wasn't true. There's clearly many problems. But Intel has changed a lot of things. So now Arrow Lake is good. If they had launched the two processors that launched a week ago, whenever it was, earlier this week, a year ago, everyone's opinion would be completely different. However, the biggest problem they've got is you are definitely getting into a platform that has no place to go. So if you built a PC, as you said, on socket AM5 with a competent motherboard 2 years ago, and you put what would that be, a Zen 4 Ryzen 5 in it, you could now be running a Zen 5 Ryzen 7 3D processor. Just drop it in and off you go. Same cooler, same everything, and it would be a different PC. Intel's got nowhere to go. So if you're a PC builder offering a product stack, down at the bottom of the range, you've got a Ryzen 5 or some such. And if someone then steps up and they say, well, I want something better than that, but not too much money, you go, well, you could go Intel. And they go, okay, well, what's the upgrade path? There isn't. And then if you want to really think, well, I want AMD 3D. So it's that a perfectly solid use case would get Intel. But I think persuading people would be difficult. It's a little like AMD graphics a few years ago when it's Nvidia, but there were certain people that should buy AMD graphics. Whereas most people, of course, go, which Nvidia graphics card should I buy? And that's exactly the problem. It's taken AMD a long time to get there, but the mind share is, I'm buying a Ryzen. Which Ryzen do I buy? And if the answer is buy Intel, it's like, well, that's weird. Of course, it was exactly the opposite 5 years ago or more. So it's strange times. But I think Intel's done this partly to prove to themselves they can actually build this stuff and fix this stuff. And I'm sure they're learning lessons for Nova Lake. I mean, it must cost them a fortune to do this. And they must now be giving processors away free of charge.
That's the thing is, I don't think it's appreciated enough when people are comparing like a 9700X to the 2070K or 270K plus. Like that, guys, AMD has like 175 millimeter squared or whatever it is, or 69, I don't really know. It's around 70 millimeter squared, 4 nanometer chiplet. And then they have like a 120 millimeter squared 6 nanometer chiplet, and they're just next to each other on a package. Intel's doing this like 3D stacking and using 3 nanometer and this elaborate packaging. And like Intel's might cost twice as much more to 3 times as much to make. And at $299, And one of the reasons I brought up in the video I did about the 290K cancellation, I said, I mean, I think half of the reason these things are as cheap as they are is they're just getting rid of them. I think they're selling them close to cost. They made a ton of Arrow Lake. Arrow Lake didn't pan out. No one bought it. And like, yeah, main reason you wouldn't make a 290K is, well, what's it going to be priced at? It's not going to be priced low enough to get rid of it. And that's what they're doing.
I actually disagreed with that aspect of your response video. So the Core Ultra 7, the Core Ultra 5 245K has become the Core Ultra 5 250K Plus. I mean, the model names are horrible.
Mm-hmm.
It's gained some E-cores and the price has gone up a little bit. And there's some clever stuff that Intel's done because these are not... Certainly some parts of the silicon have changed.
Yes, they are, yeah.
The SMC process will have been tweaked over time in a little way. It's the same named process, but it presumably has improved. And see, there are not...
So you're saying it has to be new silicon, so it can't just be that they're getting rid of stuff.
Yeah, it is slightly better silicon.
That's a good point. I would say, though, they did buy up all this capacity with TSMC. And
sure.
They're probably just... They're getting rid of the capacity they have to get rid of with TSMC.
Yeah,
I would
I'm sure
also
of that.
suggest.
And I'm sure they've also got a lot of stuff festering on a warehouse shelf somewhere. They've done clever stuff with software, which is to do with... They've made little tweaks to the silicon that Halleck described it as extra hooks, which means they can read extra things they previously couldn't read. So it's not a new design. It's little extra bits in the design. So these are definitely not dies that came out of TSMC a year ago and are sat on the shelf for a year.
That's a fair point. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Ultra 5 has become an Ultra 5 and it's gained some E-cores. The Ultra 7 has gained cores and is exactly the same core count as the Ultra 9 was. Plus it's got the improvements, plus it's got the better software. To improve the Ultra 9, they have to create a new processor. They have to actually, for example, add cores to make an Ultra 10 or Ultra 11.
Or do what they did with Rocket Lake, where the i7 and the i9 had the exact same core counts. But what did that
Well, that
result
went down
in?
well, didn't it?
And that's the thing. That was a part of the video I cut that I probably should have kept because I think it was a very good point, but I'll make it now, which is that, and I don't think enough people are talking about this. I'm going to bring it up here again, too. Arrow Lake Refresh uses more energy. I mean, I'm looking at hardware.
Yes and no.
Unboxed.
If you look at it pro rata, so if you look at the Ultra 5 245K becoming the Ultra 5 250K Plus, and it gains four E-cores, the power increase is slight. Now, compared to a Ryzen 5, it's bad.
No, but I'm talking about the 270K Plus, where at least Hardware Unboxed found it used 42% more power than the 9700X.
From what figure to what figure?
That was in gaming too.
Yeah, but what actual figure for the processor, or is that a system power draw figure?
I'd have to double check, but I saw this with a few other places too, where to actually get solid gains, like, you know, we're looking at from 265K to 270, a 40 watt or 20 watt, 30 watt, 25 watt power increase.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear, right? Clearly there is some power gain here. And so think about it. If that's this and it uses that much energy, what would the 290K have used at 5.8 gigahertz? Would it have started to use Raptor Lake levels of energy? Because that's exactly what happened with Rocket Lake. Same core counts, they pushed it hard, but Rocket Lake tried to take the performance crown, and there's no way the 290K is taking the performance crown.
Although this processor is called an Ultra 7, the Ultra 7 270K Plus, it's not, it's an Ultra 9. And it is better than the Ultra 9 285K. And the fact it's 300 pounds, dollars, where the other kicked off at 600 and is now 500. It is better than the 285K. It performs better. If you do a Cinebench chart, it is higher in the chart. There's no ifs or buts. If you compare the power draw of the original Core Ultra 7 265K with the new Core Ultra 7 270K Plus, yes, the new one draws more power, but it's better than the 285K was. So even though they're calling it a Core Ultra 7, and I
No, I
understand
know
why.
it's better, but I'm just saying that is why I don't think they can do the 290K.
Sure.
Because
Well, they can't because they've got nowhere to go, because they'd have to literally do something with it unless they did like a KS or whatever and literally juice the thing to bejesus so it runs at a higher speed.
But that's the thing. For it to be solidly better, the data suggests it would use 14900K power, and then there you go.
So where we're at now is that the Ryzen 5, Ryzen 7 non-3Ds are drawing 88 watts under load, which is trivial. And they're not that impressive parts, but taken in the round, they're pretty good. They do a decent job. They take no power. The Ryzen 7 3D takes 140 watts under load. That's the actual power draw, and it's incredible. And now Intel is in the realms of 150 to 200 watts for CPUs under load, whereas the Raptor was 250 or more. And it was only 250 after people reduced the power draw, because originally the motherboard manufacturers are pushing it to 300 or 350. And that's before we learned that would cause them to die horribly. It was always a terrible thing to do to a processor. But the world has changed. So Intel changed their power schemes and people changed their thinking. But a Raptor on reduced power is 250. These processors are sub 200. AMD, however, is sub 150. Mm-hmm. So Intel is going in the right direction, but they aren't there yet. But people were happy with Raptor, even though it was 250.
No, not people I know. I don't think people were happy with it, actually.
Well, people bought it.
They didn't. AMD dominated sales. They didn't. People like AMD. That is when AMD started taking over do-it-yourself.
But people were buying Raptor for quite some while. But the 3D came along, and when 3D arrived, that was just wonderful. I mean, it means
but Intel's the dominant player. Like AMD taking half of the sales on Amazon is actually a bad look for Intel. And
of course it is. Yeah, absolutely.
Raptor Lake is why AMD is the top 10. I don't think we can call that a success. I think it was a Pyrrhic victory for like 1 month until everyone realized it would break their PC.
One of the questions I asked Haluk, and I was more or less making up numbers, but I was saying that Intel has this peculiar position where on the desktop, the mainstream user, they've got something like 2/3 of the market, but in the enthusiast market, they've got about 5%. Yeah. In other words, anybody who's watching this video hasn't had an Intel processor in years, probably. Mm-hmm.
90% probably haven't, yeah.
Right, and if it was a question of building a PC for a member of the family or recommending it, they'd be recommending Ryzen. It's just a question. Then you get into the Zen 4 or Zen 5 and the 3D or not 3D debate. So the idea of going back to Intel is very strange to them now. But on the main, if you walk down your street and you knock on 5 doors and you hold up the AMD and the Intel badges and you say, which of these companies do you recognize? They're going to go, what's AMD? Is my guess. Because Intel,
more likely than not, I do think it's changing. Like AMD is becoming very mainstream, especially because they're doing better than Intel and AI. No, they're not at Nvidia's level, but on plenty of economics podcasts I listen to, people bring up AMD now. And they know who they are. They never bring up Intel. So
I was meaning more normies, literally people in the street. However, point taken.
This piece of content is brought to you by JLC PCB. Innovation starts with an idea, and JLC PCB helps you bring your ideas to life. With their one-stop manufacturing service, you can get everything you need in one place, whether that's PCB fabrication, SMT assembly, 3D printing, and CNC machining. And yes, from rapid prototyping to full production, they handle every step with precision, speed, and at a reasonable cost, especially when it comes to their 6-layer PCBs. On that last point, their 6-layer PCBs allow fast, clean routing and avoid the struggle of squeezing signals onto their usual 2 or 4 layer boards. More routing means more freedom and faster development, fewer redesigns, and therefore quicker project completions. Spend less time fighting routing limits and more time building the actual project. And 6-layer PCBs are usually expensive, but JLC PCB offers one of the most affordable industry prices. So whether you're a maker, an engineer, or a global hardware company, JLC PCB empowers you to turn your ideas into a reality. faster and smarter. Support Moore's Law is dead through the link below. Yes, just clicking on the link below helps the channel a ton, but obviously if you need their services, you can also get a really great price on 6-layer PCBs as well if you follow the directions and use the offer codes and coupons below. So please support Moore's Law is dead at JLC PCB today.
So what was the original question? What did I think of Raptor Lake?
Yeah.
Raptor Lake. What did I think of?
Refresh,
what did I think of Core Ultra 200S Plus that launched this week? Surprisingly good. And the problem everybody came up with is the platform is dead. The socket is dead. LGA 1851. I've probably got a stack of motherboards over my. Yeah, actually, I've got AMD boards mainly behind me. But the Intel boards are dead. You know, if you build a system today, it's going nowhere. You can do nothing else with it. And weirdly, now you've got a choice of 2 processors, which is such a strange thing. When did you ever have a family of 2? Because the previous Arrow Lakes are toast. Forget those. Forget them at any price. Buy a new one. At this point, yeah, buy a new one. If it's a case of the 285K versus the 270K plus, and someone says, I'll give you the 285K free of charge if you buy the motherboard and the RAM and the SSD, think carefully because it's not as obvious as it seems. Amazingly so. It's not a nuanced thing. The 270K plus, I know people actually many people have preferred the Core Ultra 5 250K plus. I personally was not that impressed by it. I thought it was okay. The Core Ultra 7 270K plus is a jewel, in my opinion.
So, unsurprisingly, I'm going to be a contrarian here, though.
No.
Because I know it's so unlike me. But I think an argument that isn't made enough, especially lately in the CPU world, is like, but who is this actually for? And it's something I don't think enough AMD fanboys made, actually, back in the pile driver days, because it's like, oh, but look at this pile driver chip for $200. It is 8 cores. And I'm like, yeah, but who is this for? What games are you playing? What apps? The i3 for 130 actually beats it at most things while using a third the power, even if it's just a dual core. I don't get mad at me for telling you the truth. That's just this. It is what, like, I really felt like the FX8 320 only really made sense when she got down to like 140, 120, when then it kind of became a steal. But still, you're giving up maybe the latest PCIe. You're giving up like a lot of things to go with this budget 8 core just to say you have 8 cores. And I think there's a problem here with the Ultra 5 and the Ultra 7. So the question I ask is, who is this for? Because, and I kind of heard Hardware Unboxed make this argument actually the other day. If it's for a gamer, it does not game better than the AMD processors at the same price. And now they can't upgrade to Zen 6 and Zen 7. Is it for a professional? Okay, well, what kind of professional? Because AMD dominates Adobe. Like so this Ultra 5 is not for a gamer. It's for someone who uses it for work but can only afford to pay $200. Does this person exist?
Oh, perfectly possibly it doesn't. I am prepared to accept that it is basically a proof of concept. This is Intel saying we really screwed up in unbelievable ways with Arrow Lake. We then fixed it. We've then learned lessons and we've improved it. We've shown what we can do and we're off to the races. The thing is that I assume, but you can tell me for absolutely certain, that Nova Lake presumably won't use TSMC parts. Presumably it will be Intel.
Nope, it uses TSMC 2 nanometer, I believe.
It does use TSMC.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the 18A and then 14A is for other
I haven't looked at my Nova Lake stuff for a while, but screw it. I have the documents right here. I just realized, like,
well, if that's the case, then actually it makes more sense, because this seems to me it's lessons learned.
Yeah, so I'm looking, and I can have Gerard put up. I already leaked part of this doc that will show some of this here. But if you look, you can see N2P is, and this is for Nova Lake, is listed for the 8+16, the 4+8, 8+16 again. Now you have a budget 4+0 and 2+0 that I think use 18A or some Intel node. So they'll use it for the budget chips, but basically anything with more than 4 cores is still TSMC.
Okay.
And in fact, even their Halo chiplets for 512 execution units, also TSMC 2 nanometer, interestingly.
Okay, cool. Then in that case, lessons learned from Arrow Lake, you'd assume feed directly into Nova Lake. So it's a rebuilding confidence in a brand that has been besmirched horribly. And while they haven't really been completely open, in my opinion, about how Arrow Lake was so horrendous in the first place, we all know it was. Then they fixed stuff, and now they've made it right. So, fine. Probably the market for the Core Ultra 5 is whoever is going to buy a Ryzen 5. The market for Core Ultra 7 is ever going to buy a Ryzen 7. If you're gaming, they're absolutely correct at Hub. You want the 3D AMD. No argument. It's much
or the
better.
upgrade path,
Sure. But you're talking, if your Intel processor or your non-3D AMD is going to give you 150 to 200 FPS, at 1080p, the 3D will give you 250 FPS. So that's an easy decision. Go for it. No argument there. However, I now feel more confident about Nova Lake than I did previous. I truly wondered if Nova Lake would be scrapped. I really wondered if they go, well, in the sense of if they can't make a desktop processor and no one wants to buy a desktop processor from them, why bother? Laptops will do us.
No, you have a valid point of like, this is kind of like, Intel priming the market to not ignore them twice, maybe 3 times. Like, Lunar Lake was good. Panther Lake is phenomenal, if expensive as hell. And Arrow Lake refresh at least is worth considering. Whereas, I mean, they were going from 0. Arrow Lake before was just not even worth considering. So you have positive reviews a year before you launch the follow-up, and maybe people will take them more seriously. I actually think you're right that it's probably very important that they're doing that, which I didn't think it wasn't. I just, have to ask questions.
No, indeed. And then when Nova Lake comes along, particularly what's the big version got to? Have we decided it's 52 cores, essentially the double?
Yeah,
double
4 of those are low power cores. Yeah,
of course, sure. But that's the other interesting thing that comes out of the Arrow Lake refresh reviews is that we can see what tweaking the silicon and adding to the software does. Plus, we can see what the benefit is of adding 4 E-cores. And everybody writes off E-cores as trash. But regardless of your viewpoint, you can see not only what performance is from them, you can also see the power draw, because there is, a cost. But it's not huge, but it is there. We don't know the cost, but we know the cost in terms of power, and we can see the benefit they get. So Intel's direction of travel of having very few P cores and having a great many E cores, which is where they've been going, but they've stumbled along the way. But that is where they're going. I get the impression the LP core thing, the low power cores, where they have like 2 on the SoC, that makes sense for a laptop, because you can keep keep chiplets dark and just use the SoC to kind of check the system is working. For desktop, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So P cores, E cores, sure. A lot of E-cores, potentially very good. The idea that Intel 18A or 14A is only for the trash SKU, I think that's actually quite telling. The fact they have to go to TSMC at the end of the year for the good stuff is...
Well, they might literally have to. I think they bought this capacity ahead of time, right, as a hedge in case their nodes didn't deliver. And so that's not to say I don't think TSMC 2 is better than Intel 18A. It is, but I do think they might have to use it. And, this might free up some capacity for other things as well. Who knows? But yes, I mean, I suppose if 18A was clearly better, they'd probably switch it. I think so.
You'd think, wouldn't you? Plus also, made America.
Yeah.
Made in America. So there's that. What's next on the list?
Well, Valentine writes in and says, Intel's desktop CPU still rely on a P-core and E-core split design, whereas AMD has mostly avoided that kind of mixed core design on desktop. Well, I would say entirely avoided it. Since Intel keeps doubling down on this approach, are developers and software schedulers actually adapting well to it? In current benchmarks and real-world testing, do we already see that modern programs properly recognize and use the different core types, or is that still inconsistent? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I recently tested a Meteor Lake system where I guess on the one hand, its LP cores might as well not be there because it doesn't use the
Meteor Lake's terrible. Meteor Lake.
But I didn't
Meteor
see
Lake
the apps using the wrong cores. I mean, that seems to be solved now, right?
Yeah. No, that's better, but that's down to Thread Director. And Thread Director is Intel. I've been told about Thread Director on multiple occasions by Intel. Thread Director is a very strange thing. Because Windows rules everything. So Thread Director sends hints to the operating system about what Intel would like the operating system to do. So the priority of cores is entirely in the hands of Microsoft, and Intel essentially gets to vote on it. They are very conscious that switching from low E-cores to P-cores and back again is an inefficient thing to do. So ideally, they would land on the correct core in the first place and stick with it. Switching cores and flushing cache and so on is a wasteful process. It's one of the big differences between desktop processors and laptop processors. The power scheme in Windows, where you have choose a power plan, you essentially have high power and you have balanced. They used to also have extreme, but that seems to have vanished. Where essentially for desktop, you go with the high power, which defaults to P cores, and with a laptop, you default to the balanced, which will always try and kick off on the E cores, and then will escalate a job to the P cores if necessary, purely for battery.
Strix does that too with the C cores. You can see it try to use the C core CCX.
But that's because they're both using Windows. So therefore, it's Windows, and if they try and get tricksy and deceive the power schemes and do stuff, Microsoft just changes when another Windows update breaks, or they're so therefore they AMD and Intel have to go along with it.
Nova Lake, obviously, we know will use E-cores. Razor Lake is kind of like a tick on that, so that will be basically the same design. Titan Lake, I think, I will say I have heard that by Hammer Lake or right after Hammer Lake, so that's, Nova, Razor, Titan, Hammer, just like 4 gens from now, that they might just be going back to all P cores, to be honest. Although I wouldn't worry about that short term, because the way they organize EMP cores now is they're on the same ring bus sharing cache. So they have a lot less of the issues the P and E cores had with like Alder Lake or something.
But if by that stage, because you're now looking, 5 or 6 years up the road, aren't you?
Yeah, maybe more.
If by that stage an E core is effectively what a P core has been or will be, then it could be that what they're calling P cores are actually E cores. Because let's face it, the money in 5 or 6 years' time, desktop PCs, the money won't be in desktop PCs. I mean, the money is not in desktop PCs now. It won't be there. And I hate to think that AI will still be around. So it's we are going to get the sweepings off other things, I think, at that stage. But it's perfectly possible they'll say, "Here you go. Here's 86 P cores," and actually it's 86 E cores. But
they're just as good as their P cores now. Yeah,
perfectly possible.
And I'm double checked to a doc here, and I'm seeing Titan Lake still uses it. So the foreseeable future, 6 years, we will be using E cores.
Right. So that's forever, because who can predict beyond that?
Yes, we will. The world will be in a nuclear meltdown by then anyway. So who really cares? Lucas writes in, the 250K and 270K plus seem like compelling offerings, but clearly the 7 has moved quite a bit down market. If it started at $299 now, is this the new normal or just a concession they had to make to move any of them at all? Have either of you talked to any devs also about their willingness to work with Intel for specialized support on APO? I mean, a little. Devs are actually quite worried about APO, but we'll see how it pans out. But yeah, I mean, I think that's worth talking about. Is like, I mean, another reason the 270K plus is is an Ultra 7 is they don't want to say they're selling an Ultra 9 for $300. Like, let's be honest.
It's exactly the thing about Nvidia has got the problem about how do you go now that the 5090 has moved from $1,000 to $2,000 and it actually sells for $4,000, how does Nvidia tee up 6090 Founders Edition for $999? I mean, they can't. So they are where they are. How does Apple with the iPhones, $1,000 and then $1,500? They're not going to sell the top line product for $699. They can't do it. Intel's in the same position. They can't sell. They can't sell the Core Ultra 9 285K for 500 or 600 because no one bought it. The only way to sell the thing is to make it 300, but they can't sell it for 300 because that's a huge discount. So they have to call it something different. So it's Core Ultra 7.
Yeah.
It's just as simple as that. We all see what's going on, but they can claim that they haven't slashed the price of Core Ultra 9 because they haven't. They've just changed its name.
The Paradoxy writes in and says, who is the 9950 X3D2 for? Isn't Zen 6 expected in less than a year? I don't know anymore if it is. Do you expect Zen 6 non-3D to beat it? Probably, yeah. Given the bridge dies and new I/O dies should improve memory bottleneck. So the second part, yeah, I mean, I think Zen 6 is going to be like really, really quite faster at a lot of things. It's not going to be Zen 5% again. But what do you think about the 9950 X3D2?
So which CES did they launch the 9950 X3D, the original? I've totally lost track. Was it a year ago or 2 years ago? It's that bizarre question. I think it must be a year ago.
Time is a flat circle. Let me see. Yeah, I mean, that launched... Yeah, almost exactly a year ago.
Yeah, it was a year ago. So at CES, that was the CES when they didn't do the 9070 graphics. We'd been briefed on it, and then we turned up to CES, and there were 9070s there, and they couldn't tell us about them because they didn't exist, even though we were physically looking at the things. So we were diverted. We were sidetracked. And with the processor, it was like, well, where's the Ryzen 9 with 3D V-cache on both core complexes? And the initial explanation was that it'd be far too expensive.
Yeah, I have to be honest, by the way, I've never bought their arguments like that. It wouldn't be worth it. It'd be too expensive. They didn't want to. I mean,
yeah. And then it became, as I told you, I think last time we spoke, that apparently if they were to launch it, then people like Intel could work out how much the 3D V-cache costs them because they could do the difference between, and it's like, well, that's ridiculous. And then there was some other excuse. But it would seem that the position actually is that the 9950X 3D2 will turn itself into a Ryzen 7 when you play games. So it doesn't matter about the second batch of core of 3D cache. The answer to the question is apparently is for developers, which sounds like bullshit to me.
Well, I think we'll have to see. And it certainly could be, I don't know. But when I look at some of the benchmarks I've been sent for, simulated benchmarks, I suppose, for like, well, Nova Lake's supposed to perform. I have it pulled up. I'll just read it. I mean, they very clearly say that like the big last level cache variants are 20% higher single threading, 23% higher multi-threading than Arrow Lake. And then the non-big less level cache variants are 16% higher single threading, 12% higher multi-threading. So they're somehow getting another 5 to 10% multi-threading by having a ton of cache on the dice. So I think we'll have to see, because AMD's made all of these claims, it's not worth it. And yet here they're launching it, so it must be worth it. So I think we're going to find that there are edge cases where actually it really does raise multi-threading performance a little more. And actually there are some games that have less of a penalty by being able to have 2 cache dies. I think we will see that. I just don't know how many will be edge cases and how consistent it will be. Because Intel's finding the same thing with Nova Lake, apparently. I
agree. And the consequence is that I'm really not that excited about the new AMD processor. To conclude my thoughts there, I was really looking forward to this new Ryzen 9, even though it's going to be brutally expensive inevitably. But as we said a year ago, they can go up to £1,200 or dollars as long as it's cheaper than a Threadripper, and no one will buy it.
And I think it'll probably be 800, 900 at most. But you're right; they could go higher if they want to. I mean,
But the strange thing is, probably the better advantage from the processor is not so much the 3D as the quality of the silicon. If they put really good silicon in, it'd be a great processor for the 5 people, but it's going to be developers. It's not for gamers, not for gamers.
This piece of content is brought to you by the Minis Forum eNPBA PCIe to 25G and dual NVMe card. Now, this thing is a very effective use of a PCIe slot if you have a free one that you're not using for a graphics card. It doesn't just let you use up to 7,000 megabyte per second SSDs with that SSD slot, but it also gives you access to dual 25G ports in just one slot. And so if you're somebody that wants that extra SFP28 networking and that extra storage capability for your workstation, check out this card through the link below. And actually, checking out the link helps the channel a ton on its own, but of course, buying it through the link helps as well. And you can use offer code BrokenSilicon to get $30 off this device. So one more time, support Moore's Law is Dead by checking out the Minis Forum dual NVMe, dual 25G card today. Carbon Cry writes in and says, I see people dissing the name of the 9950 X3D2, but for me, it's much better than Ryzen AI laptop branding or really even Core Ultra. And do you agree? And if you don't, how would you name it? Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine. I think the fake name I would put in YouTube titles before it was official was like 9955X60. I think X3D2 sounds less dumb. And it's like you just have to have a way of telling people what it is. And I think someone sees that and they get what it is. I think it's fine.
I think, unfortunately, it's because Threadripper is 9960, 9970, 9980. Therefore, this is the biggest number they can put on it, because it should be the 9999, but it can't be, because then Threadrippers, they've run out of numbers. Simple as that.
Florida Man writes in, given the pricing pressure Intel has placed on AMD, what do you expect the Zen 6 stack pricing to look like now? Well, Zen 6 launches probably slightly after Nova Lake on desktop. So I don't think we can really say until, but I will say, like, let's say they hit 7 gigahertz. Let's say they even hit 6.5 gigahertz and they have 24 cores with a better memory controller and like a 10% even IPC increase. I think there's no way around it. I mean, the thing I keep telling people is if you do the math, this 24 core will probably be like a Threadripper Zen 3 or at least Zen 2 in performance, like a 64 core. And in that world, I just don't know how they don't charge at least $800 for this. And the version with Vcache, look, with where prices are going, I'm going to guess it's $999 for the X3D version. Wouldn't you say?
Wouldn't be shocked. Apart from where's the world going and all the fun and games in Iran and so on, general cost of everything. So there's that. You have to wonder how much the new wafers will cost coming out of TSMC, because it's not, I don't think the rises are exponential, but they're certainly significant. If AMD is putting more cores in, they're not going to be making smaller, cheaper dies.
They actually are the same size. The dies will be, which is
but they're not smaller and cheaper.
No,
same size.
It's not like, I guess the point I'm making is, you know, Nvidia charges $800 or $1,000 now for an 80. Sure. That's going from 400 of, you know, whatever it was, like 8 nanometer and then to 4 nanometer. That's a lot of silicon. Here, they're going from 2 70 millimeter square dies to 2 like 75 millimeter square dies. At least the die size in total is like smaller than a 1650. Like, at least there's so much fat, I mean, in these processors' profit margins, that I think it just comes down to Nova Lake pricing at the top end. At the bottom end, I don't know, but at the top, it's like, yeah, but what do you think the margins? I mean, they're charging $750 for a 9070 XT that has triple the silicon, you know,
but now it
has to come.
I think it very much depends on.
I mean, I think if they want to, they still have huge margins at like 800. It just depends. Is Nova Lake good? And I think Nova Lake will be good, you know.
No, thank you. You got me back onto my hobby horse of yes, but money, because it's not just a question of what's the product cost to make and then add the percentage margin and you're good to go. It's as we've seen with Nvidia and desktop graphics, it's like, yeah, but that die could be put in something way more. Therefore, it's a wasted opportunity. And in AMD's case, they're in the data center graphics market, and they're also in the data center processors market, and they're also in the consoles, as we know. They're in lots of other things. So it's not just what could they sell it for, it's also, but what could they sell it for if it wasn't this thing, if it was a different thing. And I suspect as we go to the next process and we go to better things and more cores, prices will be up. Just up.
Well, see, and that's where AMD has a huge advantage, though, against Nova Lake. I think Nova Lake, I didn't leak the die size. Someone did, but I think they said the big last level cache dies for Nova Lake are like, I don't know what it was, like 144, 150 millimeters squared. And then you get to two of those, that's 300. And then you add the hub die, the PCD die, the iGPU die, and apparently 5 dummy dies because Intel just likes wasting silicon. And you get to like, I mean, what are we? We're at like 400 millimeters squared of total silicon, and it's 2 nanometer. Oh my God, for the big last level cache dies. So most of it is that. My opinion is AMD. I've heard that AMD's working. They have a 6 nanometer IO die for Zen 6 still. That probably might not even have an iGPU. It at least probably lacks low power cores. And then they have probably a 4 or 3 nanometer advanced IO die that maybe has all the bells and whistles. And my personal opinion is go with the 6 nanometer. I mean, even if Intel has some extra features, having half this 2 nanometer silicon and 6 nanometer for the IO die would give them just such a wild pricing advantage, because it would mean that, yes, I know Zen 6 costs more to make than Zen 5, but actually half of the silicon is still 6 nanometer. Only half of it goes up in price. So
the IO die is a big piece of silicon compared to those chiplets. Big piece of silicon.
And so I'm not so sure AMD is as screwed in pricing as some people might think.
No. I don't think they're screwed. I think it's
well, as forced to raise prices as people would think. It really is up to Intel.
No, AMD is not forced to raise. AMD has not been our friend for years. AMD has just absolutely, I mean, we've had this conversation before. Look at what Nvidia does, and then they'll go along with it. And you've said before, if AMD was to undercut Nvidia at a particular market segment for a particular graphics card, they could do well. AMD's take is, or we could just sell them for as much as we can possibly sell them for, and we're very happy, thank you. And now, of course, sadly, they're looking at gigawatts of GPUs for Meta. That's what they're interested in. However many GPUs goes into a gigawatt, there's that. What we're buying it's a sideshow. I mean, we've seen it with Nvidia. The breakdown is we are 10% of Nvidia at best.
Yeah, it's almost 5% now, I think. Yeah.
AMD wants that to be the case. They want.
I meant in terms of GeForce to all of Nvidia. Like that's the funny thing too. Is GeForce?
Yes, exactly. Okay. No, my point precisely.
Okay.
And AMD wants the same deal with Ryzen and with and Radeon. They want it to be Instinct to be the big thing. As I say, what is AMD doing at Computex this year? To the best of my knowledge, nothing that we care about. It's all going to be AI. I truly think that. I know they're doing stuff at Computex. People are going to Computex with AMD who haven't been to Computex for some years, members of staff. So they're doing stuff, but that's because AI, is money. So sadly, the stuff we're interested in, it's a sideshow.
Well, that's a further reason Zen 6 is probably delayed to early to mid next year. It's just all about AI.
You mean
right
Zen
now.
6 on the desktop, don't you?
Yes. Laptop, Zen 6, we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, but Zen 6 Data Center is late this year.
Oh, yeah. Zen 6 Data Center is coming out this year. Yeah, for sure.
That's because money.
Yeah.
So Zen 6 will be, Data Center will be this year. We will see Zen 6 on the desktop. I would have, as you say, after Nova Lake, but that could be Q1 of next year, which means they can show it at CES and talk about it.
I'd be surprised if they didn't, honestly.
Yeah. So if it comes in Q1 of next year, AMD is going to be very happy. If it comes in Q2, they could probably live with that. But data center is what it's all about, sadly. And pricing is up in the air, and there's so many other things in this world.
Again, right, for Intel, I think Arrow Lake's probably being sold at close to cost right now. People need to remember there's 3 nanometer chiplets in that thing. It is not cheap. And that Nova Lake is going to probably cost twice as much to produce. I mean, so you're looking at probably $600 to $800 flagships from Nova Lake. And so when you ask me, like, what is AMD going to cost? Well, what's Nova Lake going to cost? Because AMD can make it cost whatever they want, pretty much, actually.
Take that question you asked a few, your member of the audience asked, who is the customer for Core Ultra 200S Plus? Who's the customer for Nova Lake?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's
hopefully
exactly
people who want the best if it turns out well, you know.
Well, and obviously we all want the best, but yes, but Nova Lake certainly at the high end will not be cheap, and you can see that they're going to run into a similar situation with Arrow Lake in the sense that I doubt there'll be a cheap Nova Lake motherboard.
Oh, so yeah, I don't think so.
So even if you're not buying mega high end, even if you're buying, competent Nova Lake motherboard, then even if you get a cheap Nova Lake processor, the system is going to cost a fair amount.
And you see, again, it's funny. I think that's how AMD actually beats Intel. I mean, I'm guessing their performance will be somewhat similar, at least in multi-threading it will. And the way AMD wins, therefore, isn't trying, like Intel, from what I'm hearing, is going to maybe have some almost HEDT offering for one of the chipsets for their motherboards with Nova Lake. And well, I think AMD should try to go for that because, I mean, come on, it's basically a Threadripper at this point. I still think it's like, nah, use the 6 nanometer die. Work on getting B650 cheaper or whatever, B850 cheaper. Because if you have, most people don't need more than 2 SSDs. Most people don't need an NPU. They don't need the low power cores on desktop. You launch a generation that's priced similar to this one, maybe, add 10% or whatever. And then you also have the existing motherboards at reasonable prices at launch, and Intel's got $500 motherboards. I don't think anyone's going to care if Nova Lake's 5% faster, if it even is,
Unless and however, and I think this is what Halleck meant me to take away from this interview the other day, is Intel has long had good memory controllers. And AMD on memory and memory speeds. I'm running Zen 5 at the minute with DDR5 8000 with decent latency, and it works fine. But it's crept up over time. For a long time, the advice was stick with 6000 to make sure you don't have problems. Maybe 6400 if you're feeling brave. AMD's memory controller, AMD's memory bandwidth is not good. Intel for a long time has been much better.
Well, they solved that with Zen 6 supposedly, though, with bridge dies and stuff.
This is the thing. What I'm saying is I can imagine it's not going to be going back to my dual rank and quad rank memory. Wouldn't it be nice thing? I can imagine you've got processors where you've got this many cores that run at this much speed, take this much power. However, what they do with memory and what kind of memory, I think is going to be more significant with the next generation than it is at the moment.
Does Nova Lake require DDR5 9000 to get the most of its performance, and then AMD only needs 7200? That'd be a huge marketing, thing, kind of like now. Not saying that will happen.
Not so much whether it requires mega high fast, because it's not just a question of clock speed. If it has some 4-rank memory, it could be also very fast, or it could just be wickedly low latency, or it could be massive capacity. And going back to your point about high-end desktop, at CES this year, MSI&A data were showing a motherboard with dual channel 4-rank memory, and that was 256 gigabyte in 2 sticks. Now, I don't know what it cost. In the good old days, that would have been a lot of money. Now, I'm sure it's a ludicrous, something like 10 grand or something. But the point being is, that's the kind of thing, if you're buying a high-end desktop, you might go, say, 128 gig in dual channel. If Intel can do it and AMD can't do it, it's like, it's another point to consider is what I'm saying. So the cost of Nova Lake, I'm sure, will be a lot. The cost of Zen 6 on the desktop won't be cheap. Memory won't be cheap by then either. But there could be other wrinkles to consider.
Valentine writes in and says, desktop CPU core counts keep rising on the AMD side. We're expecting to see bumps in core counts with both Zen 6 and Zen 7, but since both are going to be on AM5, will they end up constrained by dual channel memory? Compare this to Threadripper and Epic that starts at 4 channels, goes as far as 12. Are generous amounts of cache supposed to ameliorate that? So I people keep asking me, like, how will Zen 7 get to 32 cores on AM5? And my answer is, how did Zen 3 get to 16 cores on AM4 when it started with 8? Because it was a better architecture. And I can't tell you what will happen with Zen 7 until we see what happens with Zen 6. And if in a worst case scenario, they can always throw Vcache on all of their top models and alleviate the bottleneck. And they've just never had to yet. And so I don't know about you, I'm really not concerned about the memory bottleneck. The reason Zen 5, is just Zen 5 and Zen 4 were designed for slower memory, and Zen 6 and Zen 7 won't be. I don't know.
This is true. It's also, I was doing some retesting with Threadripper quite recently. And I was digging out some previous figures going back to Zen 3 Threadrippers and such like, and you're looking at the cruddy old memory they used to run on, DDR4 3200 and so on. And you see how certain benchmark tests are just crippled by the slow memory. And you look at what we have these days and you think, God, it's so much better. And again, harking on the memory thing, that is certainly an area where it can improve. But 3D Vcache goes in a different direction. There are games, processors with 3D Vcache don't really much care what you do with the system memory, because provided it's working within the 3D Vcache. So for gamers, the processor is what it's all about. And those Zen 6 parts on paper look absolutely fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do slap on they must do a 3D version of it. They have to. So if it's high clock speed and more cores and 3D cache, they'd have to really mess it up for it to not be good.
All right. This was actually going to be the thing we were going to talk about first, but now we're coming in a roundabout way to it finally. Today, Sony increased prices on the PS5, and I think we basically have to talk about it because I feel like they were one of the last holdouts trying not to drastically raise prices in an inflationary environment. And, it happened. But, there's an interesting thing going on here, like where people asked me, this is insane, like look at the PS5 at $600 when it started at, really arguably it actually started at $400 for the digital edition. Yeah. And what I sent them, and I'll have Jar put it on screen, is if you go to the, CPI inflation calculator, actually the price right now, a $600 PS5 would be like a $400 PS4 in 2013.
It's a bargain, absolute bargain.
And the PS3 would be almost $1,000 accounting for inflation when that launched at 600. So I don't know what else to say to people except that, like, it sucks. They held out longer than Xbox did though, and at the end of the day, I mean, if you're mad that this is more expensive and you don't have more money from your job, Sony isn't the one who did that to you. Your elected officials did, and you maybe just elect people who will try to fix that. And like, there's nothing.
If I could just interject, obviously I'm British, Tom is American. What Tom is saying, people of America, rise up in rebellion, rise up against the overlords. That's what he's saying. Hey,
it worked against you guys 250 years ago, so we are known to do that.
Yeah. My response to people for at least 2 years when they're talking about graphics card prices, which obviously have gone from uncomfortable to bloody ridiculous, is the answer to every question. If you think it's too much money, is PlayStation 5. It just is, and it really doesn't matter then if it's $500, $600, or $700, because compared to desktop GPUs, it's nothing. We know plenty of people don't mind spending £5,000+ on a gaming PC, which is a fortune. And it's just a different market. I don't know how many people switch and go, actually, I've had enough of desktop PCs, I'm going console. It's long felt like, because after we know plenty of people with both consoles. And I assume this actually harks back to something you said some months ago, where you were saying that Microsoft was screwed with Xbox because they had no inventory. So as soon as prices went up, they were just done. I'm assuming Sony had inventory.
Yes, they did. Yeah, that's what I was
and
told.
I guess they're either have now run through it or are running through it and are replacing it. In other words, had it been a momentary blip in prices, but it's not been a momentary blip, it's systemic.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
I think that's
what I think, and I said this in the Moore's Laws at Discord today before we started recording. What I think happened is, there's all these inflationary things going on with trade, tariffs, memory prices due to OpenAI buying it all up, then everyone else buying it all up. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why things would get more expensive, but it was mostly the memory. And honestly, Sony's dealt with this before. And when people ask me how will they launch the PS6 at a competitive price, I'm like, well, imagine if there was a console launch during a pandemic with supply shortages where memory tripled in price overnight. Guys, we've already seen this. And they kept the PS5 at $500. In fact, Sony bought air shipping to outship Microsoft during the holiday season, even though they were maybe eating $50 at that point on every console sold. So they've done this before. They're willing to do it. I think they were willing to do that this year. And then they saw the meltdown at the Strait of Hormuz. They see oil prices going above $100, and most people saying it's going to stay above $100 for a while. Like literally, if the conflict with Iran and the U.S. and Israel ended tomorrow, prices are still going to be up for a long time. I mean, we've seen gas fields blown up that just permanent for 5 years, 4% reduction in supply. It's done, guys. It's done. And so Sony saw this, and it's like, well, what do you use gas for? Making plastic. Any of that in the PS5, precious metals are up.
What
Everything,
don't you use it for? Yeah.
Powering the things that. But so I think Sony said we're done. Clearly
let's go
prices
around the
are
loop
going
here,
up.
Tom. Because one of the other one of your audience brought up, as you mentioned, Steam Machine. So let's connect this to that, which is why would you buy an Intel PC, an AMD PC, or whatever? You buy it to play, Steam games typically, or PC games. Why do you buy a PlayStation to play the games you get on PlayStation? Why do you buy an Xbox? The answer now is you don't. Why do you buy a Steam machine? That's a tricky question. It's a cheap piece. Actually, and we know it's all looking. So the reason you buy a PlayStation is to play the games you can get on PlayStation.
Well, it used to be. Now it's, because it's the cheaper option because they don't have.
But it still is the cheaper option. That's the thing.
And that's the thing, right? Is people, I saw someone in the Moore's Laws at Discord said the PS5 is so expensive now. And I said, compared to what? Housing's up. iPhone prices are up. RAM's up. Food prices are about to skyrocket. Don't kill the messenger, people. And it's like, relative to everything else, it's the price of what a PS4 was in 2013. But
if you can do maths, you can see that Sony is not taking the piss here. If they had just literally pushed the price to $999, like an Nvidia 5090, we'll pick a number and then we'll double it, and everyone's going, hang on a moment. I mean, I feel that way when Sony brings out a new controller and it's like £150 or something, and you go, what on earth is going on here? But the point is, you're not obliged to buy the new controller. You can buy the standard controller. If the console had suddenly become $999 for no good reason, my feelings would change. But it actually feels reasonable, and it is still the budget alternative, and it delivers a good experience. And while those things hold true, it might suck a bit, but it doesn't suck as much as anything else that's going on out there, or it sucks less than other things. So it's not great, but
Deep Learning Super Slop 999 writes in and says, I get that RAM is expensive, but a $150 MSRP increase seems suspicious for the PS5 Pro. No, it doesn't. Makes me thankful I got mine for $650, shipping and tax a year ago. I mean, look, I think that actually has 18 gigabytes of RAM total because they increased it a little bit or something. Like if we're assuming like the price of RAM doubled, I mean, maybe add $100 there, account for the fact that the price to manufacture will go up from a higher energy. Plastic and precious metal is up. And
storage.
I mean, actually, I think the best argument.
SSD.
Yeah, I think the best argument to actually make about the PS5 Pro's price at $900 is it is cheaper than the PS3 at $620 in 2006.
Yeah,
you could argue that proves they're not jacking up the price too much if it's in line with previous gen consoles and inflation.
In fairness, the PS3, it was the PS3, wasn't it, with Blu-ray? So you had
sure,
you had the cost of,
but it's cheaper. It's $70 cheaper. So add the disk drive. But
funnily enough, wasn't that also Nvidia? They had to use Nvidia GPUs because everything had gone to pieces. I think it was that generation.
They did,
and Nvidia took their eyeballs out, like $100 a chip or something. So that was a foreshadowing for what Nvidia's done to us over the next years, and will do forevermore if they possibly can. And it actually indicates to me that Sony, as good as any company can be, seem to be the good guys. And there aren't, I'm not saying they're great guys,
look,
but they're not the enemy.
I'm not going to call them the good guys, but what I'm going to say is I think the best proof you can have that they're actually not passing along the cost, the best proof you can have that they're not taking advantage of the situation is that in 2013, $399 is what $600, or I guess it's $560 is now. So, and this is quite a bit more complex of a console than the PS4 was. And the PS3 in 2006 is, even if you add the disk drive, is pretty much exactly the price of what a PS5 Pro is now, and after inflation. The fact that it's scarily almost the same price tells you they haven't increased their margins at all, and they might be eating a loss even at these prices. And probably just scares everyone to hear that, because that means that's how much more expensive things have gotten for them too.
Yep, completely agree. Yep.
And it sucks. And like people say, well, okay, but will this affect their sales? Yeah, but I think it actually will. But I also think a lot of sales are going to go down because people have less money right now. So I do think there's a psychological barrier that was just breached, and thus people will buy new PlayStations. But I think all Sony can do is batten down the hatches, hope things improve next year, and then try to be aggressive with the PS6, because this year's cooked. I don't know what else to say. I don't think it necessarily was going to be cooked. I'm sorry, Strait of Hormuz gone. It's cooked. Ever feel like Microsoft is playing around with you with the prices they expect you to pay for their software? Well, that's how I feel, or at least how I felt years ago before I started using CDkeyoffer.com. That's right, this piece of content is sponsored by CDkeyoffer.com, a fantastic place to get reasonably priced Microsoft Office and operating system software. They're authentic keys that are delivered very quickly once you purchase them. And when it comes to the Office software, by the way, once you link that to your Microsoft account, it's just there in your downloads. You can get a new desktop, a new laptop, and just log in with your Microsoft account whenever you boot it up for the first time, and then download it, and it's done. And there's no need to constantly rebuy or get subscriptions to, monthly fees for Office software. You can just get it once, link it to your account, and then you just have it. And you get a couple, you can jump between different devices as well. And that is what I've been doing for a very long time, since CDkeyoffer.com started sponsoring Moore's Law is Dead. And so if you want to get some of these products for reasonable prices and show support for Moore's Law is Dead, check them out through the links below. Remember, even just clicking on those links helps the channel a ton, and it helps you save money, of course, if you use offer code BROKENSILICON to save 25% on the software on their website, in addition to the already marked down prices they have. And then, of course, you can also use Die Shrink to save 3% on everything else on the website. Once again, support Moore's Law is Dead by checking out CDkeyoffer.com today. Deep Learning Super Slop writes in yet again and says, I can't get my head around the excitement around the Steam Machine. It's so lackluster in performance. PCMR would have laughed this out of a house if they heard Sony come in and announce this is what some PlayStation was, or much more so even Microsoft. But because it's Valve who's making it, it's somehow special, like they have a great track record with hardware. How do you see it faring in the 2030s? I don't know with RT being that. So I'll be very brief. They need to launch it right now, and they need to launch it at $499 and eat the cost, or they shouldn't launch it. I'm not saying that means they won't, but I'm saying the time is fleeting for this making any sense. And you've got Sony used air shipping and ate the cost of launching PS5s in late 2020, and it paid dividends. Either Valve's serious or they're not. If they're serious, too bad. But that's all I have to say, really. And
we know Valve can afford to do it if they choose to do it. So either do it or don't do it. They're not constrained by not having cash in the bank. So yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, I guess the final thing I bring up about this, because I'm curious what you think. Like, I think it's insane they didn't buy some RAM ahead of time like Sony or really any company would have done. I mean, that's like, even if you don't, and a lot of people were forecasting RAM prices would go up, not this much, but a lot. Like, this wasn't a surprise. They went up some. And I mean, imagine Sony not buying RAM before they announced the PS6. Even in a time of no shortages, that would make other companies maybe want to buy up the RAM, so they have to buy it from them. It's bizarre. I don't know if you have any final thoughts on that. Like, it's crazy they announced it before getting the components.
Has Valve actually said the reason they haven't launched it yet is because pricing is unpredictable or it's too high? Have they said one of those two things?
So what we know is that they've directly mentioned RAM is the issue, that it's hard for them to predict the pricing. And one of them made a joke, hey, if anyone knows a guy with RAM, tell us, we need it. And I'm like, whoa, that joke they just said is them admitting they might not even have the RAM.
Well, in which case, as you say, it sounds like they're a bunch of clowns. And my sympathy is non-existent. But the fact is, you can buy memory. It just costs you money. They have money. So if they want to do it, get on with it. And if they don't want to do it, don't do it. It really is that simple. So I am mystified. But that sounds like they're being surprisingly honest and admitting their fault.
Yeah, and in that regard, I suppose it's refreshing. Another Chris writes in, hi, Tom and Leo. Do you think that AMD is in the best position to take more gaming market share next gen with RDNA 5? If Nvidia is going to double down on AI performance next gen, does this leave a gap for AMD to take market share by offering a more true to traditional gaming experience?
No, no. I entirely agree what everybody has said about the bizarre look of DLSS 5. Obviously, I think the thumbnails that Hardware Unboxed and Gamers Nexus have put up of themselves looking like a Greek Adonis is absolutely amazing and good work. However, Nvidia has been right about everything for a very long time. And Jensen, as I said to you before, has done the Steve Jobs thing, which is he remakes reality into whatever it is he desires it to become. So even if we don't like all the graphics being AI, if Jensen wants it to be this way, this is how it will be. The games developers can't not go along with Nvidia. It's impossible. So the world is going to change in that respect. AMD has what percentage of the desktop graphics market at the moment?
So I'm going to be clear, and I've had to say this several times. I do not buy the nonsense that they have 5%. If you deconstruct their earnings, it seems like they have about 20%, 25%.
Okay. Nonetheless, AMD's behavior over the last few years has been look at NVIDIA, follow NVIDIA, act like NVIDIA.
And it has not worked out for them. Let me say,
no,
it has not.
Because they don't do it as well as NVIDIA.
No, and it was better when they tried their own stuff and acted like they had their own ideas.
And on the desktop, AMD has demonstrated that they can keep us happy, which might not necessarily be the same thing as keeping the company happy or keeping the shareholders happy, but they can make us happy with, for example, you're considering putting 16 gig of memory on a graphics card, put 32 gig on the graphics card. They will sell to enthusiasts. They just bloody will. However, that's not the same as keeping shareholders happy, money come in, stock market go brr, line go up, which is what it's all about. So I assume that AMD is attempting to be a mini NVIDIA. I mean, there is a difference in behavior. For example, going back to the mention of the Meta deal, and before that, the Anthropic deal, I think it's Anthropic, OpenAI, where they get a chunk of AMD stock. And Jensen's take was, it's such a good deal, they have to give away part of the company, which obviously is a complete kick in the balls. So AMD is acting like NVIDIA, but not as well. But if Nvidia's going down the everything AI on screen and to hell with the artistic, vision of the game developer, AMD will do the same.
Yeah, I mean, if they do, I think it won't go over well. I mean, I've never seen a backlash like this to an announcement from Nvidia. But having said that, no, Nvidia isn't always right. PhysX sucked. And actually, they dropped PhysX support in Blackwell and then had to add it back. So no, Nvidia has been forced to change course before. And I think there's just a part of what you said, though, that I have a fundamental disagreement with. And that's this. No, AI people, the train is coming and they will be getting off at the station and they're going to come for your necks. Like big tech, there is going, this is a prediction. In a year or two, there's going to be one of the largest backlashes to something we've ever seen in human history. And it's going to be big tech. And the way Sam Altman talks, the way I didn't used to say this about Jensen Huang, but he's hanging out with them, maybe doing a little bit, what's that drug they're all doing? I'm blanking. What? Let me see. I bet it's so in the news. What? They're all on these ketamine highs, like partying.
Elon Musk.
I'm sorry. Like the train is coming. These speeches they keep saying where they're like, "Oh well, there's nothing we can do." Yes, people can if you keep talking like that. They're getting madder and madder and madder, and I don't agree that it's coming if they say it is. It's coming if we say it is, the people who buy their products. And so I think this is a chance for AMD to differentiate themselves if they were smart. Now, remember, I'm not saying they will, because AMD's track record of just copying NVIDIA has been pretty damning lately. And I get some of it, but I think there's a degree where it's like they really do just a little too much. Not a little, but not too much.
NVIDIA for quite some while now has had graphics cards are too expensive, you say. Well, that's great, because it so happens we have a GeForce Now game streaming service, so you don't need to buy a graphics card. You can just rent our graphics card.
You'll own nothing in the future and you'll love it. People didn't love that article.
True. However, look at NVIDIA's stock price, look at NVIDIA's, and it's not just stock price, because that could be 100 times earnings. Look at the earnings, look at the margin, look at the amount they're making. They are making ludicrous amounts of money. I don't know what the market cap is.
Yeah, but there's something interesting going on here where I believe in their last earnings call, they announced, like, it was insane. I mean, it was like they announced we have $1 trillion in orders already booked out. And actually their price didn't go straight up. So investors are starting to become apprehensive that this is sustainable.
There was some, so there was some strange wording. I forget what it was. It was something like we have sight of $1 trillion of market or something like that. They did not use the words. I can't remember the lady's name who is the finance woman at Nvidia.
Sure, but we both know what we're talking about. Yes.
And I believe she's significant because she's one of the very few billionaire finance people in a major company. But she used some very strange wording to allude to so people could put $1 trillion in the headline without saying we've got orders booked or whatever it might be for that kind of money. The bigger constraint that I think people are latching onto, and Jensen was mentioning this at GTC, he was essentially saying the limitation for a data center is the amount of power and the amount of cooling.
Well, it's a good thing there's an oil shortage going on. I'm sure they have no issues soon.
Well, but if you require 500 megawatts to power a particular data center, he's saying make sure you have the right stuff in the data center. I believe in the UK at the minute we can't build data centers at the rate that people would like to build them because there isn't electricity. Mm-hmm. You can't just tack things onto the grid because the grid doesn't work that way. You have to kind of ease it up, and the demand is so high. Not that we've got electricity anyway, but the demand is so high that where these NVIDIA chips are going to is beyond me. I mean, one obvious answer is think of a country that wants lots of AI hardware and has no problem building power stations, and it starts with the C and ends in China.
We know who, yeah.
So there's that.
Although their supply of oil was just sent into a wood chipper by the current war.
Sure, but they got a lot of coal, and they have a lot of coal power, and they've also got a lot of hydro. They got a lot of everything, and it's tricky to run your car. Actually, you can run your electric car on coal.
Yes, technically you are. Yeah.
Yeah. So power is the constraint at the limit. But up to that point, Nvidia is selling absolute fortunes of stuff. Anyway, getting back to the original point.
Yeah, but there was a scary thing TSMC said
that
too.
AMD will do, say again?
There was a scary thing TSMC recently said too. Like they have like, it was like a flaky way of saying like we have line of sight to enough power for 6 months, suggesting they might not even be sure they have enough power to keep the factories on for 6 months. Again, I think people are fundamentally not appreciating how much everything might come to a screeching halt in the next few months. And the number one person that's going to get screwed by that is, well, really any Asian country. But number two would be Nvidia. And like that just stops the boom there. And then you look at like what isn't like AI polling worse than Congress almost now in the United States? So I don't when the people say it's coming, it's not. And you're very arrogant AI people. It's not. People are mad. There are energy shortages, and I think it's about to come to a head. But that's, I could be wrong. I think it is. And I think turning your entire gaming brand into the thing that polls as bad as Congress is maybe one of the biggest miscalculations in history.
But money. Look at that sweet money they're making. I mean, AMD at the minute, granted AMD's having to, as far as I'm concerned, juice the figure somewhat by these deals whereby if line go up, these people get up to 10% of AMD's stock. I mean, they've got 2 commitments, so potentially it's up to 20% of their stock. So it's some funny stuff going on. But Lisa Su has personally got incredibly wealthy on the back of this. So she's got every incentive in the world. Everybody is calling the end to the AI bubble at some point, but then everyone called the end to various housing market bubbles. And the thing is, it's not just calling it, it's calling it at the correct time. As and when, I mean, clearly we all want Nvidia and AMD to come groveling back to us to, can we please, but a lot of stuff will have to change before that happens. When it does happen, clearly, I will grant both Lisa and Jensen an audience. But I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. And if, as you suggest, Jensen is on ketamine.
I don't think he is. I think he's hanging around with too many people who are, though.
I think Jensen has a natural... It's like there's people who have a natural level of caffeine or whatever. I think Jensen is that guy. So Jensen, I think we can agree, is naturally ketamined to a certain extent. But, it's a bit of a shame that it's going to take some god-awful... dramatic and horrible change in the world to end this thing, but I think that is
the most likely thing that actually would.
Well, it's a thing that would be decisive,
right?
I mean, unfortunately, it's not the public. I mean, after all, as you said, Copilot Plus.
Yeah, where's that going?
No one wants it, but still they make it, and
they lose market share. Linux market share going up, Windows usage going down. I'm sorry, it is backfiring. I don't think these companies are as invincible as they think they are. I don't.
We can live in hope.
I mean, you look at the comments section, everyone's mad. Like, and it's like one of those weird things, like emperors wearing no clothes thing, where one person starts pointing it out and everyone is, and then everyone just goes, why are we putting up with this? We don't have to. Like, and I don't know. To quote the leader of the United States,
the barricades, comrade. To the barricades.
I don't think you need to go to the barricades. I think they just don't buy their shitty graphics card. I mean, I think and that will be very easy to do in a recession because they won't have the money to. I just see all these headwinds and people going. It's like the underpants gnomes from South Park. Step 1, steal underpants. Step 3. Profit. They're like step 1, AI, like step 3, AI is coming. Step 1, no one wants it. Step 2, how are we getting? I don't see the gap here.
All I need to do is invent a great product everyone wants to buy. What's that? I don't know. Yeah, correct.
Well, let me see here. Dark Side of the Force writes in, says, hi, Tom and Leo. I recall back when DLSS 4 was announced with 4 times frame gen, someone calculated that about 93% of the pixels you see on the screen are just DLSS product. With 4K DLSS performance plus 4 times frame gen. With that retrospective, I think the idea of DLSS 5 is inevitable in the eyes of AI enthusiasts. It is clear that gamers reject it, but, well, so which one? Okay. But they seem fine with DLSS 4, so the line is somewhere between then and there. So what do you think there is? Well, is it, are people fine with DLSS 4? Because the polls I've seen are like half of the people refuse to use it. So I don't think it's the slam dunk Nvidia thought it would be. It's clearly a marketing point. Some people like it, but I don't think it's like normal DLSS where we all agree it's great, you know.
Nvidia will have their way, is my view. And I appreciate that's still not in line with what you've been saying. Because they have the artificial frames thing. We know what the take on that was when it first came along, particularly on some of the more sucky graphics. We actually know what the take was on ray tracing when it first came out. And it was, let's disable that.
Well, and we were right. No one used it. Like, and in fact,
indeed.
Battlefield stopped using it even with the latest one. So because again, it's like people are like, well, what about ray tracing? Yeah, we were right. No one used it. Less games. Battlefield 5 used it. Battlefield 6 doesn't. We were right.
True.
We were right. I mean, it's just, and if you say we use ray tracing now, well, sure, but it's been, you know, it's been 8 years. That's an entirely, you can't be wrong for 8 years. Say you're right and claim victory. You were wrong, actually. Now ray tracing's useful, though.
3D TV was going to be the thing. It's not.
Well, that's an especially wrong one, but yes.
Well, true. Apple Vision Pro, what a catastrophe. Although it's used in, you know, architects and such like use it, but the idea we're all going to walk around in the street wearing a thing.
See, but these companies are not invincible. Like, no, they do make mistakes. Apple Vision Pro.
Oh, sure,
3D
they all make
TVs.
mistakes. Nvidia's made horrendous mistakes.
So DLS5 could be a mistake, and then how do they walk it back? Oh, easy as hell. All you do is say, oh, well, this is the final one. They remove the AI slop filter, and they say, you guys were all mean. This is what it was going to look like the whole time. And
exactly.
It's like, it wasn't going to look like this the whole time, but sure.
And the thing of it is, I wonder, because you were asking the question in your response to it, which was, why have they done this thing now? And
because their next gen architecture is probably mostly AI, and they have to find a way to use
exactly.
it. Yeah.
And Jensen, I'm sure Jensen said in one of his keynotes in recent times that he wants everything you see on the screen to be AI generated. You know, forget raster. There's none of that. It's all going to be AI, is his view. But I wonder if there's an intent which is essentially to change games developers, because these game studios spend stupid amounts of money. I mean, crazy amounts of money developing games, $100 million, and the games are shit. Very often, they are just terrible. And most of us are complaining.
There's a problem in AAA gaming right now. Like, why is RE9? Why does that have half or a third the budget of Assassin's Creed, and yet it's a better game? Like, people are just, a lot of these studios are fundamentally just not efficient anymore, is I think the issue. But yeah.
So therefore, when people are saying DLSS 5, you know, ruins the artist's vision of the such and such and so thing, generally, unfortunately, my take is, if it upsets developers and the people that work at them, well, that's got to be a good thing, right? Because they're all terrible people. But I can imagine that there is a point, and it might not be very far away, when someone sitting around at Nvidia is saying to themselves, wouldn't it be wonderful if, to play your game, as long as you got the correct Nvidia graphics card plugged into your PC, you give Claude or ChatGPT a couple of prompts and it literally just produces a game for you on the spot. You know, mix Assassin's Creed with insert name here, set it in Western Europe in the year 1300, and let's have lots of blood. Off you go. And it just smashes together bits of 3 different games, and you just get to play a thing that didn't exist half an hour ago.
And it will be the worst game you've ever played, and it will have cost $100 million to generate it, and it would have been cheaper to just have an artist make it.
Possibly so. But at the moment, the developers, I mean, where's GTA 6?
Well, I mean, the entire company's future hinges on it being a 10 out of 10, so I'm actually not surprised. I'm not worried about that one.
Arrived. I mean, it's how many years late now?
Yeah, but GTA 6 is like as big as a console generation. It comes when it wants to. I don't know.
Sure.
I don't think, that it's really something I'm worried about.
Well, maybe not, but we thought the same thing about Star Wars and Star Trek, and they've gone to hell in a handcart. So anything is possible. I just wonder if these clever people aren't thinking, let's just tweak the look and the lighting on games, and if they're actually thinking, let's turn it into a prompt, and this thing just appears, something terrible like that.
I just think no one will buy it. Like it will be a complete failure, and those will be the companies that go out of business. I'm sorry, like that pets.com. I mean, like there are too many people. I mean, whenever I see some of these, like, look at this Coca-Cola ad, I'm like, this is hell. This looks like the worst thing I've ever seen, and it costs you more to make than otherwise.
I am going to say,
just have Ryan Gosling drink a Coca-Cola. I mean, how much could you pay him? 10 million. You're done. Cheaper. You don't need anything fancy. Put a Christmas hat on him.
I continue to replay Demon's Souls on PS5. That's all I'm saying. Until something comes along that makes me go, no, I want to play that. I'm going to continue replaying that game, which the original's 20 years old. The remake's far younger.
But actually, to continue your argument here, what games are doing well? RE9, best-selling Resident Evil, apparently, in history, it seems. And that was a handcrafted game that was really an open world game the size of a house, because it's just so in-depth and everyone loves it. What are the games that are struggling? Oh, Assassin's Creed Shadows. Even though I played a little bit, it seems like a decent game, actually. But by then, I think the Assassin's Creed name has kind of already been sullied by all these.
It's the 26th Assassin's Creed, isn't it?
There's just too many. They're too big. Yeah. And, all right, so what did I just... So we're saying the game with too much slop did worse. Adding AI is going to make that issue even worse for those developers. What AI could, and again, I'm not, this is where I have to jump in. This is where people think like don't even realize that I'm like actually kind of like mostly a libertarian. I have Gemini pulled up right here. I'm not anti-AI. I'm not anti-capitalist. I'm not anti-anything. I'm just anti-bullshit. And I'm just seeing that we're swimming in bullshit right now. And I think AI will be used to like one of the dumbest things I saw was, and this is how I know there's going to be a backlash, and it might be even stupid, is when people attack the Expedition 33 devs for using AI as a small studio just to do concept ideation. I think it's like, guys, there's nothing wrong with them doing that.
I thought that was totally
wrong. There will be good uses for AI in game development. It's just it's not going to be the slop. And in fact, in a world where there's more slop, the studios that use less will stand out more. That's my prediction.
Indeed, but you go back to the thing, don't you, of little indie games, and you go, oh, that's different. It's the problem then comes is someone tries to.
But they can use it to make assets, right? I don't think they're going to use it to make their, No,
indeed. But we're agreed. Assassin's Creed is crap, and has been for a very long time.
I don't know. I haven't really played the news. The new one looks kind of good, but I think they've ruined their brand name.
Oh, the brand's ruined. The brand's ruined.
Because Odyssey was just too big, and Anyways, though, yeah.
Going back to the original point, the DLSS. I sincerely hope Nvidia has been shocked by the level of hatred about DLSS 5, and has taken a deep, long think about what they're going to do with it. Obviously, what we were looking at was the very early version. But your point in response to that about why they've done it, that the graphics cards will be for AI, and the fact that they're not going to make an entirely different design for desktop PCs, they're just not going to do that. Therefore, this is what you've got. So it's going to be some version of what we've seen. But clearly they could tweak how it looks, obviously.
They could remove the slot part.
Yeah, absolutely.
They really should, I would recommend, by the way. And indeed, someone pointed out it's something funny. It's like the reason they called it DLSS 5, because it's not DLSS. It's an entirely different technology. Is that if they called it, AI, I don't know what you want to call it, like AI reimagining or like real-time AI rendering, everyone would have been even more mad. They had to launder it under DLSS to try to make people go along with it. I think a game dev brought that up in an interview recently. I thought that was such a funny point.
They actually ditched, they avoided calling it AI, didn't they, of course? Yeah. Even though it is AI, they didn't call it that. So, yeah, interesting point, yeah. They could have called it Copilot.
I mean, and I actually thought Copilot was a good name. right? It's like your helper. It's not, and then it just turns out, no, it just spies on you and slows down your PC. But Dead Eyes 117 writes and says, I have an idea for a version of DLSS 5 that I would actually maybe want. Instead of whatever Yassify slop the tool spits out from the being trained on the broad internet, I want something that actually just manipulates lighting and is trained on individual games. The Vision devs are provided a tool where they train it on shots from their actual game, just with path tracing and obscenely high ray counts that are totally impossible to do in real time. That way the tool actually understands what game assets. Actually, here's the problem, Dead Eyes. I've seen people say this too, but isn't it crazy they generated this in real time? And my answer is, do you know what also generates graphics in real time? Every fucking graphics card since the beginning of graphics cards, and this took two 5090s. So it's again, this is sounding very blockchain-like to me. It's like blockchain puts contracts on the cloud. The contracts are already on the cloud. We're generating images. That's what your graphics card already does. And if it takes two 5090s, they just found a least efficient way to do it. And it's because their next card might be really bad at gaming. I really think
one
that's
thing
it.
about that, the dual 5090s, when I went to the launch of, 2080, I think it was, in Austin, Texas. And that's back when we used to have, we still had SLI at the time. And they had a system with three 2080s in it. Two were running the graphics and one was running the surround sound audio. They had a 2080 just to handle the audio because, of course, it was everything was going to be developed, and this was early stages. But seeing a 2080 being used for audio was the most horrifying thing I'd seen up to that stage in my life. Of course, it's never been a thing since. So the dual 5090s, one for the slop and one for the graphics, was I'm confident that won't be the case in the future, but the fact they even showed that was a really, really bad idea. They should have put a solid panel on the side of that PC. Right,
but I gotta say, either way, that means I'm not impressed, because show me what. If you told me a 5060 was doing that at 60 frames per second in 4K, which it wouldn't be because I think that's not strong enough to do that even in the normal game in 4K, I would say, okay, that's impressive, but. So it's I don't know what it will run on, but I do know that really was it was 200 teraflops. I mean, it was or more.
Massive.
It's
massive.
Quite unimpressive. And that's where, but the fact that they thought it was impressive is what gives me no confidence here, because if they can't realize how dumb that looks, again, are they all down a K-hole and don't and they just think everything they're doing it makes no sense. You actually thought this would impress us. You need to take a break, my dude. If you think that.
It was the first demo that no one liked. It's remarkable.
Let me see here. All right. Well, I guess this is good. Kind of put an end to this conversation here. But the Forbidden Juice writes in, just listen to the recent die shrink, and at one point you asked Dan what AMD's response should be. I say don't respond, at least not directly. AMD has a hard time not playing. This is what I say. Playing 40 chess up its own ass. That's the way I've described AMD's strategy in the past.
Yeah.
As you've said before, when it comes to marketing against NVIDIA, instead they should focus on releasing FSR4 to past generations. I think they need to do that. And whenever they are ready, release the next iteration with it being simply better and more efficient than before. Do you agree that would be a good move?
I think them not doing worse NVIDIA would be a really good idea. Not responding would actually do the job in this instance. My confidence of them doing that is low because their history is terrible.
Yeah.
But
me and Dan, my usual co-host on the recent Die Shrink, literally started laughing out loud at the idea, what if AMD in a week came out and showed a worse version of DLSS? How out of touch would you have to be to see this backlash and touch this with a 10-foot pole right now?
But
It'd
the trouble
hilarious.
is, if AMD is being called by their stockholders, and we don't know if they are or not, but what are you doing to respond to this latest thing by the mighty Jensen? If they're getting those calls, then they'll go, well, we've got to do something to keep stockholders happy. They might not be getting those calls, in which case they can sit back and do nothing. But
yeah, I don't know.
Intellectually, the correct thing surely to do is look at it and go, thank God we're not doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think definitely their answer could be to the shareholders, though, is, well, gaming is like a fraction of like, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to show off some new gaming thing. We're going to show off MI 500X or whatever. And, I think that's an easy answer to give to your shareholders right now, actually, because
I'm sure that's what they'll be doing at Computex. Exactly that.
But again, it would be hilarious if AMD saw this backlash. They go on stage at Computex and then they just show off a worse version of what Nvidia showed. I would be amazed. It would be incredible.
They could. I mean, given that a large part of Saturday Night Live staff were Canadian, and obviously ATI was Canadian. There's a Canadian element to AMD still. They could actually do some proper Canadian humor if they actually really went for it. But I think money will rule the day. I never see any evidence of a sense of humor from them. Yeah,
I mean, and also when they've tried to be funny in the past, it's often backfired. Like, what did they make fun of Nvidia's 4 gigabyte cards? And then they're like, everybody, the 6500 XT.
Yep.
Like, so I know I think they're too worried. Again, just don't touch it. I think that's what you do.
I think I think that's good advice.
All right, Leo. Well, that was everything I think I wanted to touch on here for this episode.
Hooray!
We covered quite a feast of topics for everybody, whether it's what drugs CEOs in the tech industry are on, and you said that to the RAM parts or to the gates, and then we also talked about the normal gaming stuff. So I think it was a pretty full episode.
All good.
Well, please tell everybody where they can find you.
KitGuru is kitguru.net on the web. It's KitGuru Tech on YouTube and also on the Twitter.
All right, everybody. As always, thanks for watching and listening. Like, share, subscribe, hype points, comment below. Join the Patreon to ask us like Leo questions. Get access to die shrinks. The ones that I just mentioned, of course, are there. There's like an hour and a half one about DLSS 5. But it seems this is an inexhaustible resource. Me and my brother's ability to just keep harping about DLSS 5. So if you want more of it, it's there. And otherwise, like I said, thanks for watching and listening, and have a good rest of your week, everybody. This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, videos, articles, and other media. However, it's not just me. Moore's Law is Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, renders being done by the industrial designer Jean-Philippe Clermont, and special assistance is also provided by Carmen Cry and Carrie Nosugada as well. Find all of our information at www.mooreslawsdead.com on the About/Support page. In the event you do want to hire me for consulting work, hire Gerard for audio work, hire Jean-Philippe for industrial design work, or you're interested in working with Carbon Cry or Carrie Nosugada as well. You can also find our long-term sponsors on that page if you want to show them some love for putting food on our tables. Or you can also mail us some love. You can send letters or hardware donations to the following address: Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee, zip code 37206. Although, to be honest, the best way to show Moore's Law is Dead some love is to support us on Patreon. Patrons are what makes Moore's Law is Dead content truly possible. Every month, and really every day, depending on who you're talking about, me, Gerard, Dan, and Jean-Philippe are working tirelessly to provide a steady stream of content that we could not keep doing unless we knew the work was possible without being reliant on sponsors dictating every little thing we put out. Don't get us wrong. We love our sponsors, but we love directly working for you, our fans, much more. If you have any extra money, even a couple free dollars a month, consider supporting us directly on Patreon. Those couple of monthly dollars will get you access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to ask guest questions, and of course, access to the Moore's Law is Dead Discord full of like-minded people who I am sure would love to meet you. I am one of them. Additionally, higher tiers get access to early, ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the ability to ask questions in all Broken Silicon episodes and Loose Ends live streams ahead of the recording, and the entire back catalog of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, in addition to having thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts depending on the tier, with other perks available as well. And hey, if you cannot afford to support us directly every month, please do share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family, and on social media and websites like Reddit, and give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app of choice. All of this does really help us so much. But like I said, this podcast would not be possible without the patrons directly providing predictable and reliable support every month. And so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher supported levels: Brad Medlin, Drita Foles, Aegis, Daniel D, Nicholas Buckner, Deke, Toka, Aaron Close, Jan Rauner, MJB1, Daniel Hyde, GZ Ziggy, SNES Chalmers, Jam Ferrier, Valcom Alev, Jensen Wang, Sarcastro, Chris Rich, Compressed AI Blocks, Evan Dingle, Hal Booma, Shredbird, Sammy Molas, Chris Thenos, The Boss Haas, Jonathan, Tommy, Jake223, Jake Martin, Zlicky, Gamers Unite, Ian Clifford, Mead and Pork, Tim Robb, Win Wang, Travis Gooding, Zoot Taylor, Mads, Amiable Chief, Patty Cakes, Greg, Michael McGee, Stephen Coates, I Should, Mark Raidmaker, Matthew Cassels, James Anderson, Salty Internet Pirate, Henry Zhang, Wesley Sager, Cameron, Michelle Pell, Hexapuma, Teak Autumn, Reginald Ari, Little Germany, Windstar, Dan M, 1988, James I, Raider, Shay, Milton, Brett Jones, Chuck Glidden, Stephen Dick, Mac Daffy, Justin Bustle, Austin Haggerty, Joe Foot, Brian Scanlon, Brian Wright, Hardlin, Slushball, Jansen, Angima, The Forbidden Juice, RB Racer, John Swin, Bing Bong 3, Solarized 80, Elbergon, Kikum, Thalo 215, Sprutnik, Brian P, Cornsir 671, Penta Winter Smash Axley, Omega Doge, Huger, Ander Kiwi, John Wick Boomstick, Mr. Tiger, Penguins Love AI, Porcelain Oats, Kareem El Masri, Rye Hill, Chi Bulls, AI Soldier 789, Manolis Ragakusis, Kevin Kuntz, Bespoke EP, Jonathan Harris, Dominique Passeri, Fred Berger, Kainush Kagani, Johnny Tran, Zabir Ahmed, Arkeo RK0, Dudester, Mirka Lonte Beriu, Ian, Oh My God, Clover, and of course, thank you to Sahara for the music.